Jack it up.
Hurts keeps, Hurts cuts, Hurts has the first down, and Jalen Hurts might have just put it away for the Eagles. Touchdown!
Tyrese Maxey and the Sixers are going to win this game!
Joel, tough turnaround in the lane. Another 30-10 performance for Joel Embiid.
Hurts connects with Devontae Smith.
All right, good evening. 215 Scoop. Back for another episode. Talking Sixers today. Not too much to get into, but there is one big thing that I like that we're really going to want to talk about today. But before we get into all of that, I just want to take a moment for our sponsor, thesportsdisplays.com. If you're looking for a very minimalist and affordable way to hang your jerseys on your walls. I mean, I just moved in my college apartment today. If you're moving in this weekend, or if you're just trying to spice up your room and your basement, These Sports Displays sells these really nice jersey mounts. And us here at PickSwap Media, we have a promo code going on. It's called PickSwap, and you get 10% off and free shipping on your order. Now, big thing in the news lately, it was a rumor earlier in the offseason, but a KD trade. All those rumors have now resurfaced ever since the report that KD named the Sixers one of two of his most desirable landing spots, if anything comes out of his trade request. Some of the deals that I've been reading online, one of the most likely deals is the Sixers. They trade Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, Furkan Korkmaz, and Matisse Thybulle, all that for KD.
Yeah, just a couple other deals I've seen. I've seen one without Korkmaz, and we throw in a first-round pick or two. I really don't see. I would assume that there's going to be at least one first-round pick involved if we get KD.
I think so, but I don't think we would trade all that and a first. Because keep in mind, I mean, we're trading two of our starters.
Yeah, it depends how highly they value Tyrese.
Yeah, and then, I mean, although Matisse is awful and, having an eyesore on the court offensively, you can't really downplay, his defensive role on the team. Korkmaz, I don't really care too much about him, but I don't know. Like, I feel like I feel like it's way too much. And the big thing that's for me and for a lot of Sixers fans is trading Tyrese Maxey. I think that's stupid because that's really the key piece in this entire deal. I don't know. Tyrese Maxey is 21 years old, and we're trading him for a 33-year-old guy who's gone through an Achilles injury. I don't know. I don't like it, especially since Maxey has such a great upside. I mean, I've seen people compare him to being, DeMar DeRozan kind of potential. And like on top of that, he took a tremendous jump this past year. He probably should have been a candidate for most improved player. Yeah. But we saw two of the stats that I can really focus on is his field goal percentage and his 3-point field goal percentage. His field goal percentage went up 2.22%. And his 3-point field goal percentage, which is a really big jump, was 5%. He was 37% last year, and he shot about 42% this past season.
Yeah, and it's worth noting the volume, the amount of 3-point attempts he had per game. I believe it doubled. I think it went from 2 to 4. So he's jacking up more threes, and he's making them at a higher percent, which is in today's NBA really valuable, especially when that's a very valuable skill as an off-ball player next to James Harden and Joel Embiid, who are very ball dominant.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of ball dominant, that's another reason why I don't like KD on this team. We've seen in the past, I feel like the era of super teams is over. I feel like, that the KD Warriors team, I mean, can you name other super teams? I mean, I can remember
the early 2010s Miami Heat come to
Yeah.
mind. Like that's the poster child, really.
Right.
But I would say the only recent one we've really had was the Brooklyn Nets big three, which we barely even got to see play together.
Right. Yeah. Well, my point is that in recent NBA history, these super teams haven't really been that successful.
Yeah.
You've seen, I mean, if you take the past 4 NBA champions, so you have this year's Warriors, last year's Bucks, then you had the Lakers, their Mickey Mouse ring, and then you had the Raptors.
Right.
So the Lakers in 2020, I would argue they were kind of a super team. That LeBron,
AD.
LeBron, and AD.
That's really all, they had 2 superstars.
No, Andre Drummond, Jesus Christ, Anthony Davis. Yeah, I mean they were kind of top heavy, I would say.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but outside of that 2020 Lakers team, all the other teams that have won a championship recently have been deep. They're not top heavy. They have like one big star that really like goes off and everything. Even with the Warriors this past year, I mean, they were insanely deep. Stephen Curry was their one star. I would say Klay Thompson was more of like I think more of a role player. He wasn't.
Yeah, this year definitely recovering from those injuries.
Yeah. But my point is, deep teams are what create success in this league now. I don't think trading for KD is just like, oh, now we're a championship contender, because where's our depth? If we're trading guys, if we're trading Tobias Harris, which is still one of our starters, Korkmaz, which although he wasn't very significant, that's still a bench piece that probably be wanted here. And then you have Matisse Thybulle. I don't know. I just feel like we're trading 4 players that I just feel like it's so uneven. I just don't like the idea of it at all.
Well, KD fills in where Harris fills in.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
that's an upgrade. Korkmaz and Tease, if this is last year, you're probably a little more hesitant to trade those guys, but I think their value went down significantly this season, both of those guys.
I mean, I agree, but I'm looking at I drew up starting lineup coming up this season. So point guard, I had Harden, Melton, James Harden, D'Anthony Melton, and Jaden Springer.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really going to change in regards to this trade. And then I had Maxey, Tease, and Milton at shooting guard. But I mean, are we going to be forced to start Shake Milton, and then who we're going to put behind him? Like, I don't know.
Right. Well, trading all those guys as well gives us some open roster spots. So, I mean, if we trade for KD, additional moves are going to be made, I would assume.
Yeah, but like who?
There's no one really available in free agency. I
Exactly.
guess we'd have to trade some more picks for another player.
Yeah, we would have to do. I mean, we probably have to wait until we would have to like limp through. Hopefully Harden, KD, and Embiid can kind of carry us through, until February or March, till that trade deadline, and then we could make some moves possibly. I mean, you never know what's going to happen during the season. Maybe we can pull off a trade early on, but I don't know. That's just too much of a risk for me. You got to keep in mind, Maxey is 21 years old. He's 21, and he's already a pretty significant player on this team. And you're going to trade for a 33-year-old Kevin Durant, whose contract expires in 2026 and is ridiculously expensive, when Maxey has 2 years left on his rookie contract, which is like a small fraction of the price.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I'm not a fan of trading a 21-year-old for a 33-year-old on a super expensive contract, but how often does a Kevin Durant type player become available? And I feel like the answer is never. It's like Tyrese Maxey is never going to be Kevin Durant. We could have him for it. I think we could have Maxey for the next 12 years, and he might not give us the value that Kevin Durant gives us in the next 4.
But what value does Kevin Durant really give us?
Well, he's a top 2 player in the NBA.
Okay, what about the rest of our roster?
I think we're already like trading Simmons for Harden. We're in already. we said this championship window is the next 2-3 years. I think Kevin Durant gives us more value in those next 3 years than Maxey does. And in Maxey's prime, who knows what the team's going to look like. Embiid might be somewhere else. Harden might be retired. We don't know what the future looks like.
But you don't know when Maxey's prime is actually going to hit. For all we know, his prime could start within the next couple of years.
That's true.
Even next year. I mean, with how much he took a jump last year, I get what you're saying. Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. I'm not denying. I'm not saying Kevin Durant is bad. I'm not saying that. But there are other factors to the trade. I think the cost. It's not a lot of people are looking at the actual cost of the trade. Like, sure, we don't care about Matisse. Sure, we don't care about Korkmaz, and he would be an upgrade over Tobias. But, I just think it just depletes the depth of this team. And the whole point of this offseason, and one of the main focuses was, we have a good enough starting lineup. We were very solid last year. While we were the 4th seed, doesn't really matter. We were still very solid. But we're looking for a team that's going to take us past the second round of the playoffs. And while, stars do matter in the playoffs, but how do we know how Harden and Embiid and KD are going to mesh? We don't know if they're going to mesh well. That's one thing. And then on top of that, the depth. Depth is a factor in the playoffs, in my opinion. I think it's a huge factor. I mean, I just listed 3 teams in the past 4 years that were relatively deep teams, had a lot of solid role players and everything, and only had one true star, and they went all the way. So if we're gonna go for a top-heavy team, do we really have faith that it's gonna work? Are we really gonna go on a championship run once we get KD?
I mean, I agree. I see the point that you're making with the last 4 years teams, but you have to remember before that, the Warriors ran the league, and it was KD and a top, 5. I mean, at the time, Steph was probably the best offensive player in the league.
Yeah,
And
but about that,
I think JoJo is a similar force right now.
I'd say so, but it's just the cohesion. How would they work together? How would they, coexist on the court? Because, okay, we can all say that Brooklyn team looked really solid for the time that they were actually on the court. And that's another concern. KD, he had a torn Achilles. I mean, he hasn't exactly been super injury prone, I don't think.
No.
Nothing major that I can think of outside of that Achilles tear. But, how long are we going to have him on the court? And can we still trust Harden to stay healthy? That's
Right.
another thing.
I mean, in addition to already holding your breath every time Embiid goes down for the past 4 years.
Exactly. So what I'm thinking is with this Kevin Durant trade, if Daryl Morey goes through with it, I feel like it's going to be a second rendition of the Brooklyn Nets. Because you can't. I mean, Joel Embiid, he manages to stay healthy in the regular season for the most part. He misses games here and there. But my point is, this team has to be able to stay on the court together. I definitely see them being successful as far as being a real super team, if they all stay on the court together, not being injured and everything. But again, I don't trust that. I don't trust how they'll coexist on the court. It's a lot of ball dominant players. And man, I don't like the idea of a Kevin Durant trade. I love Kevin Durant. I don't think he's a bad player at all, but I think the cost is a lot more than the reward here.
I mean, this offseason was all about building up depth. I still don't love the way this bench is constructed. I mean, the Anthony Melton trade has grown on me. I don't love the way PJ Tucker fits in on the roster. I think we talked about that a little bit before the Sixers had actually signed him, and the cost of his contract for an older player. I feel like we're all in now. I mean, I don't know, man.
I mean, I see your point, but I think there's other options as well. I mean, we still have the trade deadline midseason. So if you really are not comfortable with PJ Tucker starting at the 4 and having Toby slide to the 3, I mean, we've seen Toby struggle in that kind of role. But I mean, why give up that much for KD when you're gonna have? I mean, you're concerned about the bench right now. How could you not be concerned about the bench when if or when the KD trade happens? I think that bench look is scarier to me than what it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think I would rather be more concerned about the bench and less concerned about the starting lineup. Because I mean, right now I feel like we have a very solid starting lineup and an okay bench. I'd rather have a bad bench and a superstar-filled starting lineup.
Mm, I mean, I don't know.
And this all comes with a disclaimer that KD probably doesn't leave Brooklyn at all. This is all theoretical.
Right,
I
yeah,
don't think the KD trade is going to happen.
yeah. I mean, we don't know if it's going to happen. I mean, Daryl Morey, you never know what the man's actually up to. I mean, back at the trade deadline, I mean, it was back and forth with the Harden stuff, and we were all convinced that it just wasn't going to happen, and then boom, it happened. So, I mean, this all could be just blowing smoke, but hypothetically, if it were to happen, I mean, I'd be like, okay, cool, like awesome, we got KD, but at what cost? I have grown to, especially as a Sixers fan, to desire depth over talent, like having star power in that starting lineup. Because we've seen, I mean, Embiid went down, with the thumb injury, and he wasn't able to play as many minutes, and we had B-ball Paul in. But, I mean, we've just had a history of the depth of this team coming back and biting the team in the ass because we've always had pretty solid starting lineups. We've always had really solid starting lineups, but if a player goes down, how is that next man going to play? It's all about the next man up.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with guys like Embiid and Harden, who are, pretty injury prone. Especially since Harden tore that hamstring and everything. I mean, you can't really trust either of those, and those are two pretty key players on the team. So you got to have solid people behind him. I'm not saying that B-ball Paul and Melton are fantastic, but I'm very much depth over star power. That's my point here.
I think if Embiid or Harden goes down, Melton's a good player. I mean, we still don't have a backup center. If Embiid goes down, we probably have PJ starting at center.
Right.
He played a little center for Houston a couple years ago in the bubble. If Embiid or Harden goes down, the season's over. That's unavoidable whether we make the trade, whether we don't make the trade.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, this year, Embiid got hurt. We had DeAndre Jordan starting a playoff game at center. That could have been avoided.
Yeah. Yep.
You hate to see that, but if I know we probably don't know as much about the Brooklyn Nets and their roster construction. Since you don't like the trade so much from the Sixers side, do you think it's a no-brainer move to pull the trigger if you're the Nets and the Sixers offer you that trade? Because my main concern whether the trade's going to happen is I don't think Brooklyn wants to trade KD.
I don't think they want to either. But at the same time, they have a disgruntled player on their team. And, in this league, players have the leverage. KD could hold out. KD could say, all right, I'm simply not playing for you guys until, you guys trade me. That's what happened with the KD. That's what happened with Harden a couple times. I mean, we see holdouts all the time in this league. So I think they're going to be left with no choice. And, if it continues long enough, if we can somehow get KD without trading Tyrese, if we can, prolong it, wait, maybe trade them. I'd rather trade them Toby, Cork, Tease, perhaps throw in there like Shake Milton and a couple first. I mean, that would be a boatload, but I think if we wait long enough to the point where the Nets, like, nobody wants to give up what the Nets actually want. so they're gonna have to, kind of cut down on their price a little bit, and then we shoot them that or something like that, and it works out. That's the scenario that would be best for me. Like that's what I think would be like best case scenarios for this Sixers team.
I think I don't think Katie actually has as much leverage as some players that we've seen in recent years, just because he is under contract for so long. He signed into Brooklyn. He was a free agent and he decided to go to Brooklyn. He asked for the coach there. I mean, now he's kind of been going back. There's reports that he said trade me or fire Steve Nash, which is actually the guy that he wanted to come and be the head coach of the Nets. But I don't know. I think he's being a little ridiculous. I think the Nets know that he's going to play once the season starts if he doesn't get traded. I mean, he's a guy that really cares about his legacy. He always he's firing back fans on Twitter. Once the season comes, he's going to want to play and show everyone that he's still KD.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I see your point there, but at the same time, I mean, if you really, really disgruntled with Brooklyn, I think he might actually go as far as to hold out, and like refuse to play games and everything. But time will tell. I guess we'll see what happens. But I mean, we got 2 long months before the NBA season begins. So
anything can happen with that situation.
Anything can happen. Anything can happen. But if Morey trades that package for KD, I will not be a happy camper, and I will have to see it to believe it at this point. If KD sliding in this lineup, really actually works, and we, come out the gate and tear up the league, it'd be fantastic. I mean, I wouldn't be disgruntled at all at that point. But another concern with the trade. There's just so many concerns with this trade is the chemistry as well. We had worries with Harden being traded here last year. Him being able to fit in right away and mesh and build up that chemistry. And I feel like this offseason has been a really great opportunity for all those players there to really mesh and build that chemistry over an entire offseason and, come out and play, their best basketball, the best they can together. Because, I mean, last year, Harden was just thrown in there, and I feel like the first few games it was hot, but I think things just got weird.
Yeah, they figured out how to guard that Embiid Harden pick and roll a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think, that's something that we kind of add new wrinkles into it in the offseason. So, I mean, I see what you're saying there, definitely. But, the last time we were talking about the Sixers, we were also talking about Harden taking that pay cut. And, while there may have been initial chemistry concerns, we were talking about how big of a chemistry boost that is. I think he showed that he's even in Brooklyn. I think he showed he's willing to be the third option on that team behind Kyrie and KD. So the main problem with bringing KD over is just where to him and Embiid slot as far as who's going to get the ball more often. And if he does get traded, and here that's going to be a very interesting next episode of the 215 Scoop podcast.
Yeah.
That's something that we'd talk about and we'd see as the season goes on.
Yeah, it would definitely be really, really, no doubt would be exciting.
Yeah,
and intriguing, but time will tell. It sucks because we can only talk so much about it, and you never know what will happen.
Yeah.
But shorter episode today, so that'll really wrap us up here. So thanks for tuning in, and we will be back next week talking the Birds, probably going over their preseason matchup coming up on Sunday against the Browns. Hopefully Jalen continues to play as well as he did in the first preseason game, yada, yada, yada. Don't forget to subscribe here at PickSwap Media. Turn that notification bell on. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. All that stuff is right down below. Hit us up there. And, yeah, that really covers all of it. So thank you guys for tuning in. Yep. See you guys next week.